So, new series will be based on female physiology. Probably is that the right term. We are thinking and going along the lines of how to create a world-class bikini physique female body without running into world-class issues. Because more often than not, there is perceptions that women can do exactly the same what men can do, which might be true. But this is why I'm reaching out to Scott, who is, in my eyes, extremely highly qualified in all these kind of things. And first thing what I would like to ask you, Scott, is just give a couple sentences about yourself. What are you doing? And what is your involvement coaching women to change their physique?
I'm a coach out of Canada. I've been coaching for 2 decades now. Probably from day one, I've coached a lot of females. It's not 100% of females, but it's definitely the majority. And it seems to fluctuate a little bit depending on where we are in the seasons, competition prep. Sometimes I get more inquiries for coaching from females than all year round, but it's probably 60-70% female based clientele. And I work with anyone from physique competitors to performance athletes to just general pop females, business women that just want to look good, feel good, have some longevity and some sustainability with their approach to achieve their goals.
So what do you see in women versus men? Is there any difference at all? Or is there something that you think that is definitely applicable for both genders? And just expand on that. What do you think? Like for me, I will try to stay away from women as much as I can for multiple reasons. I can coach them, but I just have a specific demographics that I work with majority of time. So what's the difference with you? Why are you involved in that kind of thing? And why are you so successful compared to someone else maybe?
There's quite a few things there. In terms of the difference between men and women, like in the womb, we are all the female physiological template. So we're all women to start. And I believe it's the 6th, 7th week of gestation or whatever, when, the chromosome switch is happening. And if you're going to become a male, that's when it starts to take place. So there are some similarities between men and women for sure. But obviously there is a lot of differences too. It depends where you're looking in terms of the topic, what the difference is, nutrition wise, training wise, etc. The variances kind of change. And then obviously if the females are natural or enhanced, this also changes things. So there are definitely some differences that should be considered, especially for females that want to continue their reproductive health and maintain their menstrual cycle, or at least consider the health of their menstrual cycle. That becomes something very, very different that men obviously don't need to be concerned with. I don't know the reason why I'm so successful with females. I do listen to them very, very well, but I also think it's because I can get through to them and show them what matters in terms of their goal, which usually is not solely on the weight. They're usually hyper focused on scale weight, and not very often is their goal is the scale weight relevant. So it's just this misconception. And unfortunately, women are the target in the fitness industry, despite most research being done in males, or most drug research being done in males, and bodybuilding, etc. And then when you look at the bodybuilding sport, most coaches are men, and they kind of give the same bullshit template that they did to all their clients, irrespective if they're female or male. So there's a lot of problems there. And in the beginning, I was getting some female clients coming to me that were seemingly not eating very much at all, running on the treadmill for hours a day. Carbs are basically non-existent, and they were not still achieving their goal, and they were wondering why. Their cycle was now being missed, and they were feeling awful. They were tired. There were all these things, and that was just from terrible coaching protocols. So I started basically with that. And once I got through to them that, you've not necessarily their fault or not, but once I got through them that they've now dug a hole, a pretty deep hole, we have to spend the time to climb out of that hole, or you're not going to achieve what you're trying to do. So it just sort of started with communication, I guess, and patience, a lot of patience. And then
So
with a desire
looking
to
into
help them.
that, sorry I interrupted you. Looking into that, I'm really curious about is someone comes to you, maybe they are just starting out, or maybe they have worked with someone else. What are the key indicators physiologically or maybe psychologically as well that you think need to be looked at with anyone? Maybe even before they reach out to hire some kind of coach that helps them going somewhere. Is there something that someone can do on their own to check, hey, am I in the right place to actually start changing my body in the direction I want to go? Or maybe I need to take into consideration something that needs to be addressed first, get my, let's just say the word health in check first, so we can move forward. So what would be those key indicators that you think need to be looked at before anyone who reaches out to you or reaches out to anyone else want to actually make sure that results are happening, instead of
I
them
think
being disheartened that you tell them, you know what, you need to gain some weight, or you need to pull back of everything you do and work actually less, or nothing's going to happen. And then they just go to you, you know what, I think you are full of whatever, and I'm going to go to this guy who promised me I'm going to be shredded in 2 weeks.
right. That happens more often than you want to believe. But I think from a something that's measurable, like a metric that you can actually check, I think they should have their bloods checked. They want to have as much detail data they can get. In Canada, getting blood work is oftentimes problematic. The doctors don't always want to play ball. It depends. I think it also depends on how you approach them. But you want to know for sure if there are any red flags in your health markers right off the bat, because if there are, some of them are going to be very detrimental to your progress. Some of them aren't going to matter for your progress, but they are very for your acute progress of an aesthetic goal, for example, but they are very important for long-term sustainability.
So could you
So
name top 5 blood markers that would immediately draw your attention? Let's say they are going to GP, and as in Canada, we both know it's a bit of a challenge in Canada. I usually send my people just fly to States. It's just across border anyway,
yeah,
and do your blood test there. It's going to take you minutes, and you just get the results back in email. So, are there 5 key readings that you look in first? We both know it's probably closer to 50s, 60s that you should be looking at. But are there some major ones that they can go to their own doctor and say, hey, check these at least with me?
I would want them to check. I would want them to make sure first that they're menstruating regularly if they're supposed to be menstruating, and they'll know if they are or they're not. And so, blood work aside, I would look for that, but I would consider that as one of the metrics you're checking. From there, I would want to know where in your menstrual cycle are you. When you get bloods drawn, you're going to get sex hormones checked, and they're going to give you a range of your progesterone, your estradiol, etc., and it's going to correlate to where you are in your menstrual cycle. So you need to be able to compare. I would also suggest a female checks their iron status, their ferritin, their vitamin D, their thyroid panel. And the more from the thyroid panel you can check, the better. Typically in Canada, they're going to check your TSH. That's sort of like the gold standard check to immediately rule out hypothyroidism. But there's a lot more to thyroid than just that. So get whatever thyroid markers you can. And if we need more, then we will push for more, either via another avenue to get the bloods drawn or keep on to the doctor. Those would be the major ones. And then obviously from a danger point of view, comprehensive blood count, like your red blood cell count, hemoglobin, hematocrit, etc., would be relevant. But that's almost certainly going to be okay. But it's the most life-threatening one acutely, so it's obviously going to matter. And then from there, it's basically just the more information you can get, the better. But the catch with blood work is we have to understand sort of the environment that the blood was drawn, so we can repeat it, because you can't just take a moment snapshot in time of blood and then freak out on a marker or not if you have no context, surrounding it. So we just want to get a foundation established. What do things look like? And then from there, one of the most crucial things is a body composition check. And by that, I mean how much fat mass to fat-free mass is your body carrying. Scale weight aside, we want to know the difference between adipose tissue, lean contractile tissue, organs, water, etc., etc.
So
And from
how
there we have
complex is this part to get? Because I'm guessing you're talking about DEXA scans, skin fold calipers, and things like that. In UK, you can reach out to some professionals. You can actually find them online. I am qualified ISAC professional, which means I have professional equipment to pinch your skin. So
right.
how complex it is, for example, in Canada, and is it maybe even accessible to buy a scale that checks your body fat and whatnot? What are your thoughts about those kind of things and tools?
It's not overly complicated to get an assessment done, but you have to take it with a grain of salt. So I offer caliper services to people. All my clients that are local and coming into the studio, I will caliper them. All my international clients, we either do this via a virtual call or they have somebody checking them that I'm basically just monitoring. But
so how
skin
important do you think is this body composition? Because you're naming it the second most important after blood tests. And I will say that hardly anyone actually does it.
agreed, agreed. And that's one of the biggest problems because 99% of the females that will come through my door, even if they've competed, they'll say, I want to weigh this much, but they're not considering the aesthetic look of the physique. They just have a number in their brain. And most experiences that I've had, like I said, 99% of them with the female clients, especially from that have come from previous competitive backgrounds, their approach to the stage was their coach would have them send in a picture and a scale weight, I don't know, Friday night or something, or Friday morning or Saturday, whenever their 1 day a week check-in was, you were probably limited to how many times you could reach out to your coach, and your reach out was a picture and a scale number, and then the coach looks at the number and doesn't see it dropped or doesn't see what he wants to see in a picture, and then immediately cuts carbs or increases cardio or both. And all the while, nothing has been done to measure your body composition. I have some IFBB pros that have never done body composition checks in categories that scale weight is not relevant.
Yeah.
So it blows my mind that even at the quote unquote top tier of the competitive industry, the IFBB, they have no idea what the fuck their body compositions are.
So
They
what
just know
information are you looking for in body composition for someone who is just starting out to start thinking about, hey, we need to increase this or decrease that, or what are there some kind of numbers you're looking for to think like, okay, this girl is healthy to push hard and try to start changing her physique, getting leaner, let's say, or maybe this girl might have some kind of health implications because numbers are too high now and we need to fix this first before actually we starting to push you really hard. So what are you looking for? What are some criteria that you determine on what type of action you're going to have instead of just, hey, let's get you lean?
Typically, to determine from a physiological standpoint if we're in a good starting place to implement some sort of energy deficit, the blood markers are much more relevant to that. If the body composition is body fat is very, very high, it's going to be very obvious just by seeing the person. You can't say for sure your body fat's high, therefore your health markers are out. You can't correlate that way, but oftentimes they do. But I would never assume. I would want to actually have some concrete data. So I'm not using the body composition check to determine if there's a health problem. I'm using the body composition check to determine how do I create the proper energy balance for this person based on the timeline that we have, and then is it doable? Is it reasonable? Is it going to kill them? Is it going to be easy? You know what I mean? I have to give them something to go off of, and then I also need that as a measuring metric because I don't want females focused on the scale weight unless they need to be. And out of my 2 decades of coaching, I've had probably a dozen females that needed to make weight for an event. The rest of them, it's aesthetics. And from an aesthetic point of view, how much you weigh doesn't mean anything. It matters what you look like. So half my clients, I shouldn't say half, a lot of my clients, I don't even know what their weight is. we did it originally, and scale weight is a trigger for them. So I just said, well, stop weighing yourself. I don't need it anymore. I needed it for my original program designs, but I don't need it after that. So if it bothers you, it causes you stress. I don't want to cause unnecessary stress. So stop stepping on the scale, and we will measure other things that are more indicative of progress, anyways, which would be skin fold measurements. Because if the skin fold measurements are moving down, and they will if the energy balance is set up properly, then body fat is reducing and the scale weight may not go alongside, at least right away. So if I have something to show females that progress is being made aside from the scale weight, it keeps them going. And if I can keep them going long enough, once their body gets the routine, then they just have a cakewalk.
So I got a question following up on this. How low of a body fat is still maintainable for health for women? Because a lot of women will come to you, to me, and they will show you a picture. I'm going to look like that. And I will tell them, that girl don't look like that. She looks like that one day in a year. That's
Right.
it. And she did 3 photo shoots back to back, but she just keeps to putting those photos back. And like, go to that girl's story or go to someone else who tags that girl. You'll see she looks nothing like that. So where do you draw the line? Is there a certain numbers that majority of people fall in, that if they go below that body fat percentage or maybe above, that issues start to arise?
It's tough to pin it on an exact number because females that are enhanced or not change their physiology to a degree to the point where their body fat percentage is going to be sort of skewed. Like typically in the health industry, female essential fats kind of is around 9-ish%. In other words, you're not going to get less than that, or you die. But then when you have an enhanced sort of female that's taking anabolics, for example, well, we've seen them as lean as 4 or 5%, just like a male bodybuilder. But at that time, with that amount of muscle and that amount of drugs, they basically are more of a male physiology anyways. So it depends who I'm working with or who I'm talking to. And then even at that, there's
so
going
what you
to
just
be
described is usually applicable for someone who is a professional bodybuilder or something like that. So someone who is usually going just for health reasons, they're not even going to go there, are they?
No. If typically if you're just a female who wants to look good, feel good, long-term sustainability, etc., everything is good. You're going to be in the most likely you're going to want to be 20% body fat or a little lower. 15% body fat's quite lean on a female. Typically, natural competitors in the bikini category are around 11%. 12. It depends on how the body fat's sitting on them. And then obviously at the IFBB pro level bikini, they're flirting closer with that 9, 10, maybe slightly lower. But at that point now, there's also anabolics involved almost always. And you're starting to skew what general public would want to be concerned themselves with.
Yeah, and I think this is very powerful message that a lot of women will think that, oh, I need to get down to single digits, and you can't.
No.
You can't.
Most
you
women are
have
not
to
ever
do
going to.
crazy things to get there.
Yes, most women are not going to get to single digits. Most women can't, and most women don't want to. They just might not realize that yet because they have this false perception of what means what, and it's because society or social media or whatever is instilling this unrealistic, expectations. The essential fats for a woman is around 8 to 9% body fat, so that means essential. It means you can't go without those.
So expand me on what essential means for women. Why is it essential?
It's going to, once they dip below that, essentially their body is now going to be breaking down to the point where it could be actually life-threatening. You can get lean enough or leaner where you're not even approaching essential body fats, but you're disrupting menstruation and hormone production, but you're still not threatening life. Like, I mean, no one can get those essential body fats to the point of being life-threatening unless they literally are not eating ever. And even that, it's the body is, especially the female body, it's wired to not allow these things to happen. So females need to be a lot more conservative and gentle with their approach to fat loss because it is just hardwired against them to get extremely lean. Because from a biological point of view, not sexism, none of this, but from a biological point of view, women give birth. They need to carry the baby around. So there's things hardwired in place that prevent excessive amounts of body fat to be dropped off the female physique. So it's just, if you're going to try to strive for that level of leanness, you're almost certainly going to have to resort to some sort of pharmaceutical approaches, because from a physiological point of view, the body is wired to not allow you to do this. So when you're talking to like a natural athlete, if they're very, very lean, and then there's going to be a sweet spot, because what you want to do, if your goal is to be as lean as possible and as healthy as possible, whatever that means to you, then there's going to be a point where the body fat is gotten low enough that hormonal disruptions are occurring. And usually with a female, it'll be a disruption in the menstrual cycle is going to be one of the first things that they're going to notice. So anytime a female drops below that critical threshold, it's the critical energy availability threshold. It's around 13.6 kcals per pound of lean body mass. Once they are below that, they are essentially disrupting things. And if they stay there long enough, or they hit it hard enough, they could now cause what's known as hypothalamic amenorrhea, where they're basically going to have irregular menstrual cycles. And that's a sign that things are out of whack, I guess you would say. And if you're in a prep, that's not that uncommon. If you're not, you don't have any reason to have that occurring unless you don't care about fertility and potential motherhood down the line. Or maybe you already are and not, willing to do that again or need to do that again. That's a very specific situation. But in general, disrupting menstrual cycle from an energy availability point of view, that's a sign that things are headed in the wrong direction.
So when you went through that, so number one, somebody needs to understand their blood test, where their starting point is. Are they actually healthy to push themselves hard, or do they need to address some health issues? Number two would be understanding their body composition and understanding the limiting factors that sometimes what is being shown as possible is more likely being harmful than actually useful. So would you say that number three would be understanding their timeline, how much time they can dedicate to this, or is it something else that you think needs to be addressed and taken in account before any woman embarks into improving their physique?
No, I think that's a good point. I think timeline is probably one of the most one of the biggest mistakes they're making. They're approaching a timeline too quickly. They think that they can get show ready in 12 weeks or 16 weeks or something like that. And unless they are maintaining their physique very, very lean all year round, a 12-week timeline it's just not going to happen. It's just too hard. If a female has to drop their energy availability below that critical threshold, they are by definition going to disrupt things. So you don't want to have to right away start there, because you're just behind the start line right off the bat. So ideally, you set yourself up a timeline that allows you to very, very slowly but progressively coax your body along to losing body fat, without aggressive dieting and aggressive amounts of energy output that is possibly interfering with life schedules, family life, etc. It's a balancing act, but to be as friendly to your physique as possible, you want to have enough time where you can just coax it along and not have to start getting aggressive. Because when you start getting aggressive, the body will start fighting back harder. And the body, despite what a lot of the myths being touted along the social media are, you're not going to trick the body. It's never been tricked. You're not fooling anything. The body's just adapting and responding to all the signals you give. And it has countermeasure after countermeasure after countermeasure in place to prevent death. And it will win every time, unless you literally just, stop eating. So if you have to get aggressive, the body's just going to adapt, and it's going to figure out ways to preserve certain things that it deems more relevant for heartbeat you know, etc. And it'll just make that your reality. And then unfortunately, what you'll see is females then being told to push harder and harder and harder, and they're that bell curve, they're way beyond the tipping point now. They're actually just driving themselves into the ground physiologically, and almost always suffering some sort of rebound after their goal date, you know, a photo shoot, a stage, or whatever, and then a whole bunch of body weights coming back on, and they feel like something's gone wrong.
So how long is usually the realistic timeline for someone to start training, get healthy enough to actually start pushing adaptations to whatever goals they have in, and then actually get into that goal? How many gaps would be some kind of maybe rest period in between, or can you just push it hard for a very long time, let's say 16, 20 weeks? So what are your thoughts about that, and what's your experience on this? How long it usually takes for somebody who has reached out to you, let's say, for example, or reached out to anyone else, to get them near where they thought they want to be?
That's going to vary tremendously on people. You could have somebody that have their health markers in check, and they have very, very good genetics, and they could literally just start, do whatever prep time was calculated out to be. Like I calculate prep times, and do that prep and be very, very successful in accomplishing their goal. And you know, that would be a bit of an outlier. But at the same token, you could have somebody that has nothing working for them, and therefore they need to put in some time. Like it depends what is needed to be achieved. If they are very
So
serious
let me
about,
make it easier for you. Someone comes in your office and says, "Hey, Scott, I'm doing this." You do some measurements. They are 35% body fat. They haven't really trained much. They've done some cardio in the past, sometimes some legs booms and tombs class, whatever. So they haven't got massive background of training, resistance training at all. Their health markers come back as they are healthy. They're kind of eating on and off, whatever kind of fits their plate. So for someone like that, who is just an average person walking in and saying to their, let's say, personal trainer in a gym, "Hey, can you get me in shape? How long will it take me?" And they will usually tell them, "Hey, 2 months or 3 months or 6 weeks, whatever." So how realistic is for someone like that, who hasn't got much of an experience in resistance training to begin with, and are fairly healthy already? You know, that 35% is not a lot for a woman. But obviously they want to get to low 20s, or even below that. So what's a realistic timeline for someone like that?
well, I think 35% body fat is too high for a female, but um, and then it would depend on what they mean by to get in shape, and what are they defining that to be. So like I'm pretty specific with the language that I utilize. So I would want to know exactly what they mean. Are they mean to, like, they want to be on stage as a bikini competitor, or they want to look good in a bikini? They want to perform at a certain sport or activity? I would want to know that first.
So let's say
Um,
they just want to look good in wedding dress.
okay. So then the next thing, because I just actually prepped the bride for a gown. So the next thing would be, okay, well, what's the dress size that you're trying to fit into? And then I go from that. But um, the reality is that typically, if they come into me and they have a higher body fat percentage, I'm very much used to them recently not eating much at all in an effort to try to lose weight. And so what they're doing is they're being aggressive with dieting, and then looking at the scale to see what their progress is looking like, and then getting frustrated. So reality is probably they are going to have to spend a few months with me eating at what I would calculate to be their maintenance caloric intake, sort of to allow that body to calm down from a physiological point of view and show me exactly what it's doing. And I can tell you 100% of the time so far, a theoretical calculated maintenance caloric intake for a female has led to fat loss every single time. Um, and it's
So
usually
why does
because
it happen? What is the trigger on that?
what my why I know what's happened with my clients, because I have their history and context, and I'm going to assume that this hypothetical situation is the same, is because they have been approaching weight loss in probably not the greatest manner. They have got these adaptations that have occurred. Their metabolism is adapted. Things are down regulating to basically handle the fact that the energy coming in is too low. So the body is basically, imagine the systems in the body on dimmer switches, and it's just dimming down certain systems that aren't crucial for homeostasis. Like your heartbeat's not going to take an effect, blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, is going to be relatively stable, but it doesn't give a shit about your metabolism. So if it needs to down regulate metabolism, the low energy intake, it will, and it does, and it happens all the time. So that's typically
So
why.
just to brighten this up, I think I can give an example of when you're getting ready for bodybuilding show, for example, and try to get into extremes, you stop fidgeting. Like I have
That's
been
neat.
to stage where I stopped blinking my eyes.
Right. And that's your body's adapting to the lack of energy. So that's your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis is decreasing because there's just not enough energy coming in. Sometimes what you can do is you can have people measuring their step count, and from a subconscious level, you'll see it getting less and less and less because they're not necessarily aware, but somewhere in your 24 hours a day, your body is reducing how much energy it's utilizing because you're not eating enough.
Yeah.
That's happening. That's how the body survives. And so therefore, when I have people that have been dieting to lose weight and they're using the scale as the focus, and sometimes that scale is not working, for example, they're coming up to their period and they get a 4 or 5 pound weight spike from water retention that they can't avoid. They see their scale weight up on that one time they check it, and now they think, oh, it's not working, I'm going to diet even harder, until they break. And then they usually, binge on something for the day, or maybe they binge for an entire week, and they erase a lot of what they've done, all from a false positive. And they just continue to do that vicious cycle and digging that hole from a physiological point of view. And then the body just gets to the point where it's literally, it's tired. Things have adapted, they've down regulated, and it's just not optimized anymore. It's not running on a full tank of gas. It's learning to run on fumes. No car runs as well on fumes as it does when it's topped up.
So your option would be there is no set timeline, but more often than not, you would encourage to someone like that just appreciate that longer, slower would be the best approach to maintain not only their physiological needs into kind of being powerful and energetic, but also to maintain that health in the long run. Does that sound about
Yeah.
right?
I can calculate times for everybody once I have their context and I have some measurements. So I can give timelines for, theoretical timelines for any of the scenarios. But longer, lower, slower is always going to be the best approach for long-term sustainability, longevity, etc. And it also allows, a lot of people will say like it takes 21 days to start a new habit, but it's like 90 days. And that's assuming you continue with the same consistency. So if we can get this longer, lower approach happening, and you're meeting many stepping stone goals along the way that keep you progressing, then some of these things will become habits, and you'll be doing them subconsciously, and they're actually leading to progress long term. And then your long term sustainability becomes more and more and more on your side. But then obviously there's going to be outliers. Like if somebody said, I have to make this weight in 3 weeks because I just had a bet at work and it's worth $5,000. I had this case happen with a client 3 years ago. He made a bet and he had to make weight. So you make weight, but you do things that you wouldn't normally do, and then you set the stage so they know, like, after this you're going to have quite the rebound, and blah 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 blah. But from a normal theoretical ideal approach, you establish some sort of protocol that caters to their lifestyle, so it's not a major hindrance to family life, work life, social life, etc. And they can just coax along. You show them metrics that matter to prove that progress is being made, and you encourage them to not focus on ones that aren't as relevant, and then you just sort of watch it unfold and adjust things as they need. It's really, I don't know if it sounds complicated or it sounds easy, but it is actually quite simple. It's just a matter of being consistent and allowing the actual progress to reveal itself and not prematurely, cutting calories, adding cardio, being
Mm.
aggressive, because you're just going to end up getting a backfire somewhere in the timeline, and you're going to have a hard time knowing exactly why and when it'll happen.
So from what I hear, let me tell me if I'm wrong, but timeline is not as important as appreciating small wins along the line of those timeline, to understand that if you want to change your life and if you want to change your physique, you should focus on long-term adaptations that are easier to sustain than something that is hard, drastic on your body, because the harder you push, the harder your body is going to push back, and you are risking at snapping and basically packing all in because you're not really seeing the results you wanted, and then completely disregarding all the process and maybe never getting back into healthier shape.
If the goal is a lifestyle, 100% yes. If there's a timeline on a calendar date that has to be met for some sort of competitive reasoning, there's lots of things that have to be considered and adjusted accordingly. But if it's for the female that wants to look good, feel good, and keep that going, then yeah, we have to establish a protocol that complements your lifestyle, that gives you progress and allows you to continue to make progress without interfering with too many other things, and then showing you what measures to look for in terms of, are we making progress or are we not. And I think females should not just take whatever anyone's saying for, like, they should believe that that's happening. Like, if I say to you, our focus is to lose body fat, and your scale weight is up 5 pounds, but your belt cinched in 2 notches tighter, you're going to think that you're not making progress because the scale weight's up, but that belt is not lying. You didn't shrink the belt. So you have to give some metrics that are pretty concrete, and usually body composition checks, if done properly, and measurements like clothes fitting and stuff like that, are going to be a lot more positive proof than scale weight, because we can make the scale weight read whatever we want. I mean, combat athletes, we intentionally move the scale for events, so it's not the most relevant metric for a female to check. So it's important that they understand that and then know why and where else to look for to see if progress is happening.
So let me know if I can summarize this correctly. If someone wants to try and change their physique, so a woman wants to kind of start their fitness journey, their goal is to maintain health long term. First thing what they need to do is run a blood test. No matter what kind of goal you have, run a blood test. Even if you're not going to get yourself involved in resistance training or whatnot, blood test is essential to understand if you're healthy or not. Second point would be run a thorough as you can body composition test, either DEXA scan, caliper measurements, bod pads. There are a million things, and it's easy to research, hey, how do I get my body comp tested? And number three would be realistic about your timeline. Don't fall for the 6 weeks challenge, 10 weeks challenge, this or that, because let's be honest, if you want to be fit and healthy, do you want to be fit and healthy for a week, or do you want to have it as a long-term stuff? So approach it as a marathon instead of a sprint.
Exactly. And the goal, I think it's very clear that females are understanding exactly what their goal is and what measurements are we going to use to show that the goal is being achieved. And it's never going to be scale weight if the goal is aesthetics. It just can't, they just don't correlate. Scale weight, if you have a goal of a certain number because it's a bet or for whatever reason you just love that weight, that's fine. But that doesn't necessarily mean you'll look a certain way. So you can't correlate the two. So I think it's very important that the goal is understood, so they make sure that they're not being derailed by a false positive.
Yeah, I call it clarity of outcome. If you are not clear of where you want to be, you're not going to take anywhere near as much action as you would otherwise. Yeah, if someone says, oh, I want to make more money, you're just going to sit there and think about making more money. Yeah. If you think about, oh, I want to get promotion for such a percentage, so you're going to start working more and put more effort to actually be rewarded for that. So how a clarity of your outcome in front of you, instead of, hey, I want to lose some weight, I want to weigh so and so with such and such body weight, such and such body fat percentage, perform so and so, be able to kick, run, jump, whatever. And in your head, your mind will start looking for those answers itself. Awesome, Scott. Thanks for your time, and we'll start expanding on in next videos about what is actually order of importance in executing tasks to get someone from where they are to where they want to be. And I would like to know your thoughts about nutrition, training, philosophy, and mindset, all other things that need to be taken in consideration instead of just copying some template from, let's say, some kind of Google search engine and hoping that it's going to work. So
Yeah, no,
appreciate
that's
your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thank you.